Imagine standing on the smooth, weathered surface of the Regina Virum, the Queen of Roads in the year 81 of the Common Era. As the early morning sun begins to climb over the rolling hills of the Italian countryside, casting long, dramatic shadows across the meticulously placed basalt blocks that stretch toward the horizon. Here, amidst the golden light and the rising mist from the nearby Tiber River, you are witnessing the pulse of an empire that refused to leave anything to chance. Because for the Roman mind, the world was not a chaotic wilderness, but a vast, sprawling canvas that required the discipline of the ruler and the precision of the mathematician to truly conquer. You might hear the distant, now rhythmic clatter of iron-rimmed wheels against stone long before the vehicle itself comes into view. And as the dust settles, you see a heavy wooden carriage, its frame groaning under the weight of administrative necessity. But it is not the cargo that captures your attention today. It is a small, unassuming bronze housing fixed to the axle, a masterpiece of ancient engineering that hums with the clicking of gears and the quiet, steady promise of mathematical certainty. This is the Roman odometer, a device born from the same intellectual fire that fueled the construction of the Colosseum and the spanning of the mighty Danube with timber and stone. And as the wheels turn exactly 400 times to complete, a single Roman mile, a vertical gear with one single protruding tooth engages a horizontal wheel with 400 teeth, which in turn moves a third component that releases a solitary smooth pebble into a bronze bowl with a clear, resonant chime that echoes the heartbeat of a civilization built on the principle that if you cannot measure it, you cannot rule it. Think of the sheer ambition required to look at a continent stretching thousands of miles and decide that every inch must be accounted for. From the rainy highlands of Britannia to the scorching sands of Roman Egypt, where the scent of papyrus and Nile silt fills the air, and realize that this drive for data was the true glue of the state, allowing an emperor sitting in the marble-clad luxury of the Palatine Hill to know exactly how many days of hard marching separated his legions from a distant border conflict, or how many sesterces in tax revenue should be expected from a newly surveyed province in the east. As you walk alongside this carriage, the smell of the morning is a complex tapestry of wood smoke from roadside villas, the earthy scent of damp leather harnesses, and the sweet aroma of freshly baked emmer bread wafting from a nearby taberna, where travelers gather to swap stories of the road. And you begin to understand that these roads were the high-speed fiber optic cables of the ancient world, carrying information, culture, and power at the speed of a galloping horse or a steady marching soldier. Every 1,000 paces, or 5,000 Roman feet, a massive cylindrical milestone of solid stone stands as a silent sentinel, carved with the name of the emperor who commissioned the repair or the distance to the golden milestone, the Millenarium. Orium, which stands in the heart of the Roman Forum as the 0 point of the known universe. A gleaming pillar covered in gilded bronze that reminds every citizen that all paths, no matter how rugged or remote, eventually lead back to the center of the world. Imagine the life of a surveyor, a man known as a mensur, who spends his days squinting through the sights of a Groma cross-shaped instrument used to ensure perfect right angles while the odometer clicks away behind him, turning the wild, undulating geography into a predictable grid of centuriation that defines where one man's farm ends and another's begins, ensuring that even in the smallest village, the law of Rome is as solid and measurable as the stones beneath his feet. The economic engine of the empire relied on this predictability, for when a merchant in the bustling port of Ostia, surrounded by the towering masts of grain ships and the shouting of dock workers in a dozen different languages, calculates the cost of transporting Spanish olive oil or Gallic wine, he does so with the knowledge that the distances are fixed, the mountain passes are mapped, and the time of arrival can be estimated within a fraction of a day. This was a world where a schoolchild in a small provincial town might sit on a stone bench, the scratch of their bone stylus on a wax tablet mimicking the precision of the empire's engineers, learning that the strength of their society lay not just in the iron of their swords, but in the standardization of their weights, the reliability of their coins, and the unyielding geometry of their cities. If you were to step into a local marketplace during the heat of midday, the air thick with the smell of roasting meats, pungent garum fish sauce and the floral notes of Mediterranean herbs, you would see the result of this measured culture in the way the stalls are arranged and the way the officials, known as ediles, inspect the measuring vessels to ensure no customer is cheated. For in Rome, a measurement was a sacred contract between the citizen and the state. Even the sounds of the city were shaped by this need for order, the rhythmic thud of the blacksmith's hammer shaping a new set of iron tires for a long-distance freight cart. The splashing of water in the great public baths, like the baths of Caracalla, where the humidity and the smell of scented oils create a sanctuary of leisure, and the constant underlying murmur of the crowd in the forum, debating law and politics with the same vigor that their ancestors used to debate the placement of the first city walls. The challenges were immense, of course, as the empire faced the constant pressure of maintaining tens of thousands of miles of paved surfaces against the ravages of winter snow in the Alps. The torrential spring rains that turned dirt paths into quagmires, and the slow inevitable shifting of the earth itself. Yet the Roman response was always more engineering, more measurement, and more data. When you look at a modern map today, with its thin red lines representing highways and its GPS coordinates providing sub-meter accuracy, you are looking at the direct descendant of that pebble-dropping cart, for we still live in the house that Rome built using the same logic that tells us that a society can only be as stable as its ability to quantify its surroundings. The modern odometer in your car, the trip meter on your smartphone, the very concept of a mile are all echoes of that bronze mechanism, clicking away on a dusty road 2,000 years ago, proving that while empires may rise and fall, the human desire to master space through technology is an eternal constant. Consider the sheer physical sensation of the journey, the vibration of the cart's frame through your sandals, the cool breeze that picks up as the road climbs toward a mountain pass, and the sight of a massive aqueduct bridging a valley with its repetitive, elegant arches, structure that could only exist because someone measured the slope of the land with such precision that the water flows for 50 miles using nothing but the gentle, calculated tug of gravity. There is a profound human story in these numbers, story of the nameless workers who quarried the stone, the engineers who calculated the curves, and the administrators who tracked every denarius spent on the infrastructure of peace, or the Pax Romana, which allowed a person to travel from the sun-drenched coast of Hispania to the lush valleys of Syria without ever leaving the protection of Roman law. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in bruised purples and deep oranges, the odometer traveler might pull into a mansio, a government run-in where the smell of wood smoke and stewed lentils promises a night of rest before the journey, continues at dawn, and as he settles in, he might look at the box of pebbles collected that day and feel a sense of profound connection to the vast machinery of the state. He is not just a man moving through space. He is a data point in a grand experiment of civilization, participant in a culture that valued the how far and the how long as much as the who and the why. This obsession with measurement extended to the very way the Romans perceived time, dividing their days into 12 hours of light and 12 of dark, varying the length of the hour with the seasons, yet always seeking a way to track the passage of existence with the same mechanical rigor they applied to the land. You can almost feel the texture of the coarse wool tunic against your skin and the weight of a bronze coin in your hand as you realize that the ancient world was not a place of primitive guesswork, but a sophisticated network of technological solutions that address the same human needs we have today: the need for trade, the need for security, and the need to feel that we are part of something larger than ourselves. The road continues to stretch out, a white ribbon of limestone and volcanic sand cutting through the green tapestry of the countryside. And every pebble that drops into that bronze bowl is a testament to the fact that the Romans didn't just inhabit the world, they indexed it. When you walk through a modern city today and see the straight lines of the streets, the standardized sizes of the bricks, and the way the flow of traffic is managed by timers and sensors, you are seeing the ghost of the Roman mentor standing on the corner with his groma and his odometer, still insisting that the world be made legible and orderly. The legacy of the odometer is not found in a museum alone, but in the very fabric of our administrative lives. In the way we calculate the distance to our jobs, the cost of our fuel, the time it takes to reach our loved ones across the country. It is a reminder that the great achievements of history are often found in the small clicking details, the hidden gears of progress that turn quietly beneath the surface of the grand narratives of emperors and battles. So, next time you feel the minor bump of a distance marker on the highway, or hear the digital chime of a delivery notification, remember the creaking of that Roman cart and the steady clink, clink, clink of the pebbles, because that sound was the first rhythm of the modern world being born. The Roman instinct to measure was an instinct to survive and to thrive, creating a framework of reality that allowed for the birth of complex banking, the movement of vast quantities of grain to feed a city of 1 million people, and the coordination of a naval fleet across the Mediterranean, which they affectionately called Mare Nostrum. Even the political transitions, shifts from the stern virtues of the Republic to the gilded complexity of the empire, were underpinned by the same administrative obsession for weather. The leader was a consul or a Caesar. He still needed to know the distance to the front lines and the square footage of the provincial wheat fields. The beauty of the odometer lies in its simplicity, a translation of physical motion into a tangible record, and in that translation, the Romans found the power to turn a wild continent into a coherent home. As the twilight deepens and the stars begin to appear, the same stars that guided the Roman sailors and the desert caravans, the odometer finally falls silent as the cart stops for the night. But the data it has produced remains, a permanent mark on the ledger of history that says, we were here, we went this far, and we knew exactly where we were going. This is the cinematic reality of the Roman world, a place where the air was filled with the sounds of industry and the smells of a globalized economy, where a person could stand on a stone bridge in the middle of a forest and know that the very same stone beneath their feet was part of a grand, measurable design that connected them to the center of the civilization. It is a story of human ingenuity that uses nothing but wood, bronze, and iron to solve the problems of the soul. For what is measurement if not a way to quiet the fear of the unknown and replace it with the comfort of the known? The Roman odometer is a small object with a massive shadow, revealing a people who were restless, ambitious, and deeply fundamentally practical. A people who understood that the greatest empire in the history of the world was built 1 mile and 1 pebble at a time. As we look back through the lens of 2,000 years, through the dust of fallen monuments and the echoes of forgotten speeches, the clicking of those gears remains a clear and persistent signal, a reminder that the tools we use to define our world are the very things that define us as a species, and that the Roman quest for the perfect measurement was, in the end, a quest for a world that made sense. The landscape may change, the languages may evolve, and the technology may shift from bronze to silicon. But the Roman spirit of standardization, that demand for a culture that can be calculated and communicated, remains the bedrock of everything we have built since the first milestone was placed on the road to Rome. Every time we look at a map, every time we plan a journey, and every time we trust in the numbers that govern our lives, we are honoring that ancient instinct, that Roman demand for a world that can be grasped, measured, and ultimately ruled by the power of the human mind. The odometer was not just a tool, it was a philosophy, a statement of intent that said the distance between 2 points is not a mystery to be feared, but a challenge to be mastered. And in mastering that distance, the Romans mastered the art of civilization itself. Think of the heat of the Italian summer, the way the air shimmers over the paving stones, and the sight of a legionary detachment marching in perfect unison, their hobnailed sandals hitting the ground in a steady, percussive beat that matches the clicking of the odometer. And you realize that every part of Roman life was synchronized to this great mechanical pulse. The baker who weighs his flour, the architect who measures the tension in a bridge cable, the senator who counts the votes on a piece of broken pottery. They are all part of this same grand tapestry of quantification that allowed Rome to endure. For 1,000 years, even as the empire transitioned through the reigns of the 5 good emperors and into the complexities of the later centuries, the roads remained, the milestones remained, and the odometer continued to turn, a symbol of continuity in a world of change. We can still see the traces of this world in the street plans of London, Paris and Barcelona, where the original Roman grid still dictates the flow of 21st century life. A permanent imprint of a culture that refused to let the land remain unmeasured. The pebble in the bowl is more than just a counter. It is a piece of the earth itself, relocated and repurposed to serve the needs of human knowledge. A tiny, humble icon of the greatest logistical achievement of the ancient world. So, as the curtain falls on this journey through time, let the sound of that pebble hitting the bronze be the last thing you hear. Clear, sharp note that rings out across the centuries to remind us that we are the heirs to a measured world. And that our own journeys, no matter how modern they may seem, are still being tracked by the same human desire to know exactly how far we have come and how much further we have to go. This is the enduring legacy of Rome, not just the marble and the monuments, but the invisible lines of measurement that still hold our world together, ensuring that even in the vastness of space and time, we are never truly lost, as long as we have the tools to count the miles. As the cart begins its journey once more the following morning, the cycle begins anew. The gears mesh, the wheels turn. And the story of the empire continues to be written in the language of distance and data. A story that is as much about us as it is about them. A story of a culture that demanded measurement, and in doing so, created the future. Imagine the sensation of the sun on your back as you watch that cart disappear into the distance, heading toward the horizon with the quiet confidence of a machine that knows the way, and realize that you are looking at the birth of the modern administrative state, the first flickering light of the technological age, all contained within a simple wooden box and a handful of smooth, round stones. The road is long, the work is difficult, and the challenges are many, but with the odometer at our side, the world is no longer a place of guesses, it is a place of certainties. A place where every mile is a victory, and every pebble is a promise kept. Promise kept. This is the Roman way, a legacy of stone and gear, of dust and data, that continues to guide our footsteps, even today. As we march forward into our own unmapped territories with the same restless, measuring spirit that first conquered the world 2,000 years ago, in the quiet moments of the night, when the city is still and the modern world seems to pause. You can almost hear it, the faint, rhythmic clicking of the bronze gears, the sound of the Roman heart still beating under, the asphalt of our modern streets, reminding us that the journey never truly ends. It only changes its pace. We are all travelers on the Roman road, and every step we take is a testament to the power of a measurement that turned the world into a map and a map into an empire. This is the story of the odometer, the device that taught us how to rule the distance, and in doing so, taught us how to rule ourselves. The scent of the Mediterranean Sea, the sound of a bustling market, feeling of a cold bronze coin, these are the textures of a history that is still very much alive, woven into the fabric of our everyday lives by the simple, elegant logic of a cart that knew how to count. So let us remember the Menser and his Groma, the engineer and his odometer, and the emperor and his golden milestone, for they are the architects of the measured world we call home. In every mile we travel, in every map we draw, and in every second we track, we are repeating the ancient Roman prayer for order. A prayer that was answered with a click, a turn of a gear, and the steady, reassuring drop of a single stone. This is the ultimate triumph of Roman technology. Not that it lasted forever in its physical form, but that it forever changed the way we perceive the space we inhabit, turning the infinite into the finite and the unknown into the measurable. The world is large, but thanks to the Romans, it is no longer immeasurable. And as we look toward the horizons of our own future, we do so with the same tools of precision and the same thirst for knowledge that first drove a wooden cart across the hills of Italy to count the miles to the end of the earth. We are the measurers, the surveyors, and the map makers of a new age. But we walk on the stones laid by those who came before us, and we count our progress with the echoes of their pebbles. The Roman odometer is a silent witness to the fact that, while power may be fleeting, the truth of a measurement is eternal. It is the measure of a man, the measure of a city, and the measure of an empire that refused to be forgotten. As the sun reaches its zenith, illuminating the entire expanse of the Roman world, from the Pillars of Hercules to the banks of the Euphrates. We see the full scale of this achievement, world united by roads, governed by laws, and defined by the relentless, beautiful precision of the gear and the stone. This is our history. This is our legacy. And this is the story of how the Romans built a culture that demanded measurement and, in the process, measured the soul of humanity itself. Through the changing seasons, from the heat of August to the cool rains of November, the work of measurement never ceased. For the empire was a living, breathing thing that required constant adjustment and revaluation. The tax records had to be updated, the army routes had to be verified, and the new settlements had to be integrated into the existing grid. All of which required the steady, reliable data provided by the odometer and the men who operated it. It was a labor of centuries, a collective effort of millions of people who believed that the world could be improved through the application of reason and technology. And as we stand here today looking back at the ruins of their great works, we see not just the broken stone, but the enduring logic that built them. A logic that continues to shape our laws, our cities, and our very understanding of what it means to be a civilized society. The Roman odometer is a small, brilliant spark in the long night of history. A reminder that even in the ancient world, the human mind was capable of extraordinary feats of mechanical ingenuity. It is a story of progress, of ambition, and of the unyielding desire to turn the chaos of nature into the order of the state. It is the story of Rome, and it is the story of us. With every mile that passed, the empire grew stronger, more connected, and more resilient because it knew exactly where it stood and how far it had to go. And that, in the end, is the true meaning of technology. Not just to make things easier, to make them more certain, to give us the confidence to step out into the unknown and know that we can find our way back home. The Roman cart continues. Its journey through our imagination, its gears clicking, its pebbles dropping, perpetual motion machine of human progress that will never truly stop as long as there are roads to travel and worlds to measure.